Is it on?
Small. I don't know.
It isn't.
Okay, is that better? Hello.
Yes.
Okay, welcome to Helicon West. Yay!
Yay!
The date is February 27th, and I don't know how many we've done now, so that I don't know why I'm saying the date. How many have we done?
A bunch.
A bunch. Okay, good. Okay, so I'm here to introduce our special reader for the day, but I'll get to that in just a second. But there's just a couple things that we need to go over. The first is our new broadsides are out. Yay, they're gorgeous. Okay, I believe these are available for purchase somewhere. How much are they?
$2.
$2, okay. And so we have, on it this time we have Trevor Grant and Benjamin Keaty. Yeah, did I get that right? Oh, good, okay. And Benjamin's here tonight, so maybe you could either read this or something tonight, that would be great. So, or not if you don't want to, sorry, I don't want to force you to do anything you don't want to do.
He read it already, you know.
Pardon? Oh, he did, okay, good. So, all right.
That's the way you get on, you have to read.
What's that?
That's the way you get on a broadside, you have to read.
Oh, okay.
And then you have to submit your work.
So it's a two-step thing, though. Okay, that's good to know. So if you're interested in doing that, getting on the broadsides, which are gorgeous, and this is the 43rd one, you said?
Yeah.
You read first and then submit to, do they send them to you to start? Okay, so star.colebrook@usu.edu. And yeah, it's a great publication. It's a good thing to have under your belt. It looks like also, so the art is by Kevin Goodrich, and as always, Brian Cook was the one who edited it. So, yay, good job. Okay. Also, it looks like we have a couple spots left on this. So if you want to sign up for this, I will leave it on the table right there. So we'll do that. We always have to thank the Logan Library for hosting us. I was just looking for it, that's what I was looking for. There was a letter to the editor saying we were too rowdy or something like that, or we swore too much or something. I wanted to read it aloud, I couldn't find it in enough time, which is a shame.
That was for Edwards.
Well, have you found it then?
No, it's online. Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah.
If you were reading right now, I would tell you to find it, but...
I'll have it for you before you're done.
Oh, cool, perfect, okay, that would be great. So we really appreciate them going out on a limb for a whole bunch of ragtag little rascals. We appreciate you for doing that. And always USU Writing Center, who actually gives us money for doing different things, for bringing in writers and things like that. So that's fantastic, so, which are also fishing essays that are very good. And he also has something forthcoming in an anthology, Western Front Reflections, published by History Press, and I believe that was the one he read last time about spring coming to Cache Valley and fishing in the spring and things like that. So those are that's his official things. Chad, if you've been to this before, you've probably heard him read. He's very good. I've known him for years. He's good. Simply put, he's my favorite Cache Valley writer. And maybe my favorite Utah writer. He's creeping up there. You got to beat out Scott Carrier though, and he's a tough one to kick out. So he's really good, and I'm excited that he's going to be here reading for a little bit more. We get to hear more stuff by him. So yeah, that's it. Thanks, Chad. We'll have you read. Yeah.
Thanks. Hi. How's it going?
Chad.
Everyone all right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's all about
Great.
love tonight, and I can do that because it's February. I still have 36 hours to cram some love down your throat. And I'm going to exercise that prerogative.
Oh, I should have introduced you. Read these down in southern Utah this week too, right?
Just a couple days ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was fun. At Darren Edwards. If you're ever down in St. George on a Tuesday, or I guess any day of the week, they have open mic function down there for music, poetry, different kinds of performance art, jazz, at Jazzy's Rock and Roll Grill on Bluff Street in St. George. It's a really cool place. Around 8:30 or so, go down there. It's really great. The theme that I came up with for this, because it's February, is love, monstrous love. I think that even you younger people understand that love is not You know, it's not like this gentle-hearted, tender creature that's sort of a cross between a bunny and a kitten and a unicorn. It's really much more destructive and dangerous than that. And the way that I picture it is really like, you know, like a Japanese, you know, Tokyo-crushing monster, just like 800 feet tall and immensely powerful, and you can't tangle with a being like that without running a really, you know, high risk of getting yourself crushed and just, you know, having it just eat your skin. And that's kind of more where I you know, I guess I'm not very romantic when it comes to romantic love. And the time that I think about it a lot is, of course, around Valentine's Day, because it's the time when all of those people who haven't found it yet get it crammed down their throats. And the one thing that I find very interesting about it is the little Cupid that we use as a shorthand for Valentine's Day and for giving box of chocolates and taking your honey out on a date. Because we use the little version of the Cupid, which is basically a naked angel baby who flies around with a cute little bow, a little gilded bow, and an arrow that's about this long with a heart for a point. And he apparently just sort of hangs around city parks and looks for people who look nice together, and he plinks you, and then your eyes turn into hearts, and then everything's peachy. But that is not the original conception of that character. You know, the Greeks sort of came up with Cupid as a guy with a bow and arrow, and he wasn't an angel. He did what the gods told him to do. You know, they would say, hey, Cupid, I need you to show up at the banquet, and there's this girl that I want to get with later, so I'm going to have you shoot her. If you would do that, I'll point her out when I figure out who it is. And if you would do that, that would be great. And he would just do it. So he wasn't like an angel, he was like a mercenary, and he had these arrows. And the Greeks knew what it was like to get hit with an arrow. You know, it happened a lot more often back then, and it's a shaft of wood with a metal point on it, and it penetrates you, and it destroys your internal organs, which you thought were covered up and protected. And there's blood and shrieking involved. And I think that they chose that right. I think that they got that part right. Because that's what happened. You know, that as a symbol of falling in love, that is exactly, you know, what happens. Shrieking, blood, there's remorse. And sometimes when Cupid would make two people fall in love, it was basically a death warrant because they couldn't be together. So one of them would just throw themselves off a mountain or into a river, or there was revenge killings involved, you know? I mean, it's not, if you think that love is, you know, warm and cuddly, you're just, and I don't know, maybe some of you do, you just have no idea what you're in for. So that is my sort of upbeat, you know, introduction. But there's another side, obviously. Because love is this sort of towering, monstrous thing, it can lift you up. It can elevate you and allow you to see, you know, these sweeping vistas of emotion and you know, the order of life. And once you see things from that perspective, which you can't do without love, once you see that, you change and you find out your purpose in life, or you find out where you're supposed to be. And so it's not really a matter of like, should I risk it? It's that you have to. You really have to, even if that just means waiting for it to happen. That a little bit more cheerful, a little bit better, right? A couple of people are kind of okay. So I have these stories. They're about love, or kind of about love, I hope. There is some blood, and there's not very much shrieking, but there is a little bit of bleeding and misery involved. But I hope that I think it's important when we get together like this that you're moved, you know, that you feel something. And so if you do, you know, maybe just show it. Maybe just lay your head on the shoulder of the person next to you, or hold the hand of the person that's sitting next to you. Even if you don't know them, like especially if you don't know them, who can promise me, show of hands, that they'll do this? Anybody. I'll be watching you, and I'll be watching the person next to you. If you're feeling it, you got to show it. There you go. So this first one is called Exacto, and does everyone knows what an Exacto knife is, right? Little like consumer grade, super sharp scalpel. Okay. Figures into this story. I hope you enjoy it. It's called Exacto. I got this. No, I don't. There. to tell me how great Janine is. After 6 months together, I knew everything about her. It was no accident that old boyfriends called her on a weekly basis. No accident that every time I ran into my old roommate, Trent Gleason, he'd say, "So, how are things with you and Janine?" Not, "Hey Ryan, how's your new place?" Always, "So, how are things with you and Janine?" The thing about Trent and I is that we hate each other's guts. If I could get away with it, I would murder him. And I don't mean shoot him and sink his body in the reservoir. It'd have to be a Hannibal Lecter sort of thing. Skin him out with an X-Acto knife and eat different parts of his body. Not really. But I do hate him, and I feel bad about that, but he feels the same way about me, and so I guess it's sort of okay. This goes back quite a while. He thinks I stole some girl from him, and I think he stole one from me, so we hate each other. Of course, we can't admit this. If I say I hate him, that means I'm threatened by him. He wins, and vice versa. So we've been at it for years. When we see each other, it's very friendly, but underneath, it's tense. That's why he asks me about Janine, to force me to say it. "Trent, I hate your guts." Not that I was worried about him stealing Janine. She was way too loyal. One time we were at Spooky's playing pool, and she slapped a guy for coming on to her. Slapped him right across the face like a movie star. She even looks like one. The hair, the smile, and funny. You're not going to find a funnier, prettier girl, not in this town. We had a few problems, minor ones. I don't even remember a lot of them, but we weren't jealous or clingy or frigid. The main problem was something totally different, something I never saw coming. She was always presenting me with some part of her body and saying, "Will you pick this? Will you pop this? Will you peel this for me?" She loved having things peeled and plucked. It was a Zen thing for her. I spent one whole Sunday afternoon peeling her sunburn. Peeled every square inch of her back. One piece was the size of a dollar bill, and it made the sound of duct tape coming off the roll. She said, "Oh, that was a good one." Other couples go for bike rides, walks in the park. "What am I doing this Sunday?" "Oh, not much. Just peeling my girlfriend." She'd get out of the shower and I'd hear, "Rye, can you come in here for a sec?" That's how it started. The day she moved in, she called me into the bathroom. She was twisted around trying to see her back in the mirror. She said, "Babe, can you see this? What is this? Is it a zit or what?" I pretended I couldn't see anything. She said, "Right here, right where my finger is." I said, "There's nothing where your finger is." She said, "Well, I can feel something." I said, "You mean this?" "Ow, yeah, what is that?" I said, "I do not know." She said, "Well, does it look like it belongs there? Can you pick it off? Can you squeeze it?" I said, "You want me to squeeze it?" She said, "Yeah, go for it." Then she braced herself on the towel rack like we were in a Western movie. And I was getting ready to pull a bullet out of it. I worked on it for 5 minutes. It finally popped. A bunch of pus came out and blood. I was in love with her, but I wasn't ready for pus. Is that selfish? Is it selfish to say I love you, but I don't want your pus on me? Things got worse, lancing blisters, plucking kinky hairs from unexpected regions of her body, tampon stuff. Everyone has little zits and welts, but most people are embarrassed about that kind of thing. Janine put me in charge of it. Anything she couldn't reach, identify, or remove herself was my responsibility. She'd say, "Hey, remember that blackhead we found last night?" And I'd cringe and say, "Yeah." "Well, you didn't get it all the way out. Here." And she'd hand me the little black bag, a nylon zipper pouch with tweezers and gauze and stuff, like a toolkit for the pseudo-medical maintenance of her body. She said, "If those tweezers aren't going to do the job, there's an X-Acto knife in there you can use." One time she crashed her bike and got a big road rash on her calf. It turned into a million little scabs like strawberry seeds. They snagged on her tight, so every night she had me picking them off. You won't find a sexier pair of legs, but I got scabs and blood and skin under my nails. That's not sexy. And if you think she's got great legs, look at her feet. They're perfect. Her toes are straight and even with little perfect toenails. I used to kiss the top of her foot on the blue lines of her veins where they traced up into her ankles. But then she introduced me to the foot smoother. It's a little plastic chicken egg with a cheese grater on one side. The ladies rub it on the rough parts of their feet to smooth them out. The shavings collect inside, like a pencil sharpener. But instead of wood and graphite dust, it's all full of dead human skin in powder form. She put me in charge of that too. The first time I emptied it out, I tried to pull it apart instead of twisting, so it popped open and the skin shavings went all over me. Like when you sneeze on a powdered sugar donut. I got it on my face and lips. I breathed some of it in. I was in the bathroom hopping from foot to foot, trying to figure out how to decontaminate myself. She was in the bedroom saying, "Ryan, I've got another foot, you know. After that, I couldn't kiss her feet anymore. Same thing happened with all her other parts, her butt, her elbows, her rib cage. One by one, they devolved into individual dermatological concerns. After 6 months of ingrown hair patrol, I started losing interest. Trent Gleason would check in with me periodically. I told him, Trent, everything's fine. Geez, you're such a vulture. He said, well, vultures can tell something's about to die. He's quick that way. Prick. Meanwhile, Janine was ready to take the relationship further. Not the love relationship, I mean the semi-medical, X-Acto knife relationship. She had me operate on her ingrown toenail so she could ride in a charity bike race. I said, I really think a doctor should do this. She just laughed, cut me open. What could I do? I cut her open. After a while, she started asking questions that I just could not handle. Hey, Rye, my pee kind of smells like dish soap. What do you suppose that means? Come here and smell. Think there's something wrong with my bladder? It's not that I'm a wuss. I have worked on my lady with an X-Acto knife. I'm not squeamish, but our physical intimacy became bodily intimacy, and that's not the same thing. That's why women can sit on one of those tables with the stirrups while a stranger gives her a pelvic exam. It's not sexy, it's clinical. That's how I thought about Janine as my patient. Sometimes instead of sex, I just loofah her knees and maybe give her a quick breast exam. I didn't know whether to smoke a cigarette or bill her insurance. I finally told her, I can't do this. We can't stay together. She didn't know what to say. These things we do, the mole plucking, the zit squeezing, the surgery, it's revolting. Her mouth dropped open. After that, I went about like you'd think. It was like her ingrown toenail, a lot of crying, blood everywhere. And I hesitated, started thinking about what I was doing, about how every relationship's got some version of infected toenails. I once told Janine I'd go to yoga with her, knowing for a fact I never would. Told her the same thing about charity races and volunteer stuff. She never said a word about any of that. So I thought about walking it back, trying to start over with some ground rules, but she was cut open, draining. I didn't know, she told me. Her voice was hitching like a little kid. I had no idea you found me revolting. That's not what I meant, not at all. But you can't come back from that. That's the problem with a word like revolting. You can't unsay that one. I could tell her she was beautiful 1,000 times, and every time she'd think of the one night I said, revolting. So I just did my best to mop it all up, keep it sterile. Trent Gleason didn't waste any time. Janine wasn't even moved all the way out when he texted me, hey, I was going to stop by your place and check it out, okay? He was the last person I wanted to see. I was lying on the bed. Some of Janine's things were still around, sweater on the chair, hand lotion on the vanity, her smell. Now I knew why old boyfriends call, guys from back in college, from high school even. But you can't unlance a boil, you can't unpeel a sunburn. Sure, Trent, come on over anytime. I almost said, hey Trent, listen, I hate your guts. But with love, certain things you don't have to say. It's the same with hate. He didn't act arrogant. I'll give him credit for that. The Rangers were playing that night, and he watched the game with me until they were up by 2. Then he took a sip of Dr. Pepper and said, so, I hear things with you, Janine, through. I said, yes, they are. He said, I was thinking of asking her out. Unless you're not cool with it, unless you think, things will get messy. I didn't say a word. I just got up from the couch and walked out. He sat there watching the Rangers. I went into the bathroom and got the little black bag. Opened it up and emptied it on the vanity. There were a few things I'd added. Surgical gloves. A nice pair of tweezers. I got one of those little mirrors that dentists use. I'm not going to even explain that one. I picked up each tool one by one. Her foot smoother, her X-Acto knife. Girls are so complicated, so puzzling. Not Janine. Janine came with her own toolkit. Put everything back inside and went to the couch, handed the bag to Trent. He unzipped it and looked in. He held up the X-Acto knife and said, what's all this for? I said, it's for her. It's all for her. Try to hang on to it for as long as you can. Thanks. So I don't often write about love. I don't write about it very often at all. In fact, as Russ said, we've both been writing kind of more about fly fishing, which is the opposite of love. You thought that hate was, and it can be, but the direct polar opposite is actually fly fishing. There's people in here that you can ask to confirm that. But when I do write about love, I think of myself in this kind of pompous, romanticized way, like one of those explorer scientists, like maybe like Charles Darwin, but maybe not as notable as Charles Darwin, maybe one of the lesser explorer scientists, you know, and they get on like a sailing ship and they have the sea captain drop them off on a tropical island and say, just come back in 20 years and pick me up. And then like for 20 years, he's just collecting 10,000 butterfly specimens. Just walking around in the tropics, you know, the pith helmet, the tie, the jacket, spectacles, he's just gathering up just butterflies for 20 years. And you guys, I'm just going around, each one of these is a little butterfly. You guys are like the science panel, you know. He comes back 20 years later, big long beard, cracks, his glasses all cracked up, he's just a ruined human being. And they're like, well, you were gone for 20 years. What can you tell us? And he's just like, 10,000 butterfly specimens. No, that's it. It's for you to figure out, I guess is what I'm trying to say. These are just pages. This is just crap that I saw or thought of, and I don't really know what it means. It's just kind of more for you guys to tell me. And this one in particular, because the central action of this I saw happen at a lake once. I was at a lake, and there was a family reunion going on, and I saw the thing that happens at the end of this happen right in front of me. And I ran home and I jotted it down, and then I kind of had to write a story around it. But this is like a real field observation. This happened like out in the wild. And I hope you like it. It's called Bring the Jackets. And one thing I need to tell you is that the narrator of this is a lady. And you'd probably pick that up from the context and stuff. But if you blink and you miss the line, you wouldn't know. So I want you to know that the lady is narrating this. This is called Bring the Jackets. I'm still in my nightgown, but Terry's got the car almost packed. I sit in the kitchen and watch him through the window trying to figure it out. He's made about 20 trips so far. Sometimes he takes just one thing with him, like just the water jug. Other times he takes a big armload of stuff and drops it in the driveway as he goes. A couple of times he goes to the car and brings things back into the house. He props open the door with Maisie's big wheel, then stumbles over it, coming back in. On the next trip out, he's got the big red ice chest with my beach bag on top. He stops at the kitchen and says, "Babe, you want me to grab you a jacket?" I wish. A couple of hours of rain would be a perfect excuse to stay home, but the sky is an ugly, spotless blue. Terry, what makes you think we're going to need jackets? It's supposed to be windy and cold up there later. The internet even said so. It's 8 in the morning and he's sweating already. His glasses slide down to the tip of his nose. He wiggles his face to keep them from falling off. Not once in how many years have we needed jackets? He says, "So, want me to bring them?" "Sure. Bring the jackets, babe. Bring your mittens while you're at it." He goes out and throws his weight behind the cooler to cram it into the hatchback, but he bangs his head on the edge of the car. The beach bag falls and my books and sunglasses spill out. Terry rubs his head, then bends down to pick up my things. His ass crack emerges into the perfect sunlight. Usually it's me prodding him to get ready, which is fine. If anyone has a right to hate my family's big 4th of July trip, it's Terry. He's the one my brothers will de-pants or push off the pier. My dad won't do anything about it. Last year I said, "Daddy, you got to do something about Derek. Tell him to lay off Terry." He said, "Ah, Shelley, that'd just be blood in the water." I'm not sure how things got turned around, but he comes in and says, "All packed." He's so sweaty he's got to change his t-shirt, jiggling as he pulls a fresh one over his belly. It's his favorite shirt, black, with a picture of some new military jet that costs $1 bazillion. "When are you going to get ready?" he puffs, combing his hair down with his hand. "What if we didn't go?" I say. "We could stay here and grill some chicken." He frowns. You say, "I don't like it when I grill. It's never cooked all the way." "We'll go out then." "Nah," he says. "Your family'd kill us. You even said so. Why don't you want to go?" "I don't know. Brian and Derek can be such jerks." He waves his hand. I just ignore him. "Derek pushed you in the lake last year," I remind him. "You just about lost your inhaler." "No, that was 2 years ago," he says. "Last year Derek put ambrosia in my sleeping bag." "That's what I mean. They're such jerks." He shakes his head. "You're going to want to talk to your mom. Maisie's been dying to see the cousins. Come on, we got to get moving." He goes down the hall and calls Maisie. I get in the shower. When I was a kid, I couldn't wait to get to the lake. It's where I learned to swim, where I first kissed a boy. I sit on the bed with my wet hair, thinking of the things we could do if we didn't go. Nap in the backyard. Read. We'd play with Maisie in the sprinkler, her diaper wet and sagging. Terry gives me a couple of quick toots on the car horn to keep me moving. I put on a sleeveless collared shirt that makes me look a little less chubby. Then I go out and slump into the car. Terry hops in, and we back out. Then he puts his seatbelt on one-handed as we take a corner, and he just about sideswipes Mrs. Schultz in her Oldsmobile. "Slow down, babe, geez." "Yeah, Daddy, geez," says Maisie. Terry eases up, but it seems like he's leaning forward, like it'll make us go faster. I watch him as we pass by the houses and cul-de-sacs. He's grinning a little, but with the same expression he gets when he finally decides to jump off the high dive at the city pool. "What?" I ask him. "What is with you?" He shrugs. "I'm just excited." We drive through town and get on the frontage road. He's definitely leaning forward, definitely grinning. "Have you got some sort of plan?" I ask. "Are you trying to pull something on my brothers?" Terry looks at the speedometer for no reason. "You can't beat them, Terry. Derek will see you coming from a mile away." He glances over, shows me the grin. "Oh, you are planning something. This is so not a good idea." He says, "I just want to get there, okay? We gotta get a good spot this year." That's true. Dad always reserves a huge camping area, but if we're late, we'll have to camp by the water with the mosquitoes, or on the hill where everything's slanted. I quiz Terry about what he packed. "Did you get bug spray?" "Yes." "Sunblock?" He hands me his phone. "Here, it's the first checklist." I scroll through it. It's everything I packed, plus a few things I forget, like marshmallow sticks. It's a good list, and I'm getting ready to say so when I see the last item. Kite. I look up from the phone. "Kite? You brought the kite?" He looks at the speedometer. This is not a regular kite like from the supermarket. It's a special stunt kite, and Terry put it on our credit card without telling me, 5 or 6 years ago. The kite cost a lot of money, and back then we didn't have a lot of money. I knew why he wanted it. Not very many people get to be exactly what they want to be in life, and that's too bad. But some people want to be the one thing they can never be, and that's Terry. He'd somehow got it in his head that he should be a fighter pilot. He loves jets, knows everything about them, but he's got so many health issues, he never had a prayer of going into the military, let alone getting close to any jets. His mom once told me his Air Force recruiter wouldn't even give him a free t-shirt. Get him close to any airplane and he gets a look in his eyes like a kid, seeing the only Christmas present he wants, knowing he'll never get it. So I let him keep the kite, grudgingly. The lake would be a great place to fly it, but it's one of the few things we still fight about. He has to go to a park on the other side of town to fly it. He's in a club with his buddies and they all fly kites together without wives. The wallpaper on Terry's laptop is him holding a kite. We have a baby, a human being dog, and he sets his wallpaper to a kite picture. "So you're going to be off flying your kite the whole time," I say. "No, not the whole time. I hate that kite." "You've never even seen me fly," he says. "I'm one of the best in the club now. Josh even said so." I toss the phone in his lap, fold my arms. "Well, Maisie's excited to see me fly. Right, sweetie?" Maisie hides her face with her arm and says, "I'm not opposed to say anything if Mommy's around." Mommy knows about it now, I tell her, and that's when I get it. His favorite t-shirt, packing the car, his diving board grin. "Is this your plan? Is the kite somehow your plan?" He stops grinning. "Oh, Terry, how is a kite your plan?" He clams up, but he speeds the rest of the way, so we're nice and early. The camping area is a grassy half-acre next to a cove on the north end of the lake. Along one side stands a big wall of cottonwoods that shimmer and hiss in the lightest breeze. On the other side, grassy hills that glow at sunset. Derek hasn't shown up yet, so the space next to my dad's camp trailer is open. Terry gets our tent out of the car. "You think Derek will be mad if we set up right next to you?" I ask my dad. "He'll get over it. He knows to get here early." Terry and I put up the tent without talking much. He's sweating again, pulling up his drooping shorts. The sun climbs and more people show up. Pretty soon Maisie is swept away in a swarm of cousins. "I wonder where Derek is," says Terry. My parents shrug in unison. In their matching deluxe camping chairs, they both sit the same way. Slumped down, right leg crossed over left, arms draped on the armrests. King and queen of the campground. I unfold a chair next to them and Terry sits on the ground. He pulls up handfuls of grass and throws it into the air, checking for wind, but it falls straight down. It's lunchtime before Derek pulls into the campground in his enormous Chevy. It glitters with so much chrome, Mom and Dad shade their eyes, even though they're both wearing sunglasses. We hear the music thumping across the campground. Behind the truck is a trailer with 2 jet skis. "What an outfit," says Dad, shaking his head. "It hurts my eyes," says Mom. The cousins hoard around Derek as he dismounts the truck, even though they know it will probably be tomorrow before he gives out any rides on his jet skis. Derek towers above even the tallest of them. He's wider than any 2. He looks the place over, as if he's just conquered it. Brooke hops out of the other side. Her huge sunglasses hide everything but the tip of her nose and her mouth and some of her forehead. Then Brian swings in. His truck is smaller than Derek's, but just as loud and shiny. He gets out and Derek grabs him. They wrestle and the kids back away. It's like watching two buffalo contend for territory. Pretty soon, Brian's in a chokehold. His face turns purple before Derek lets him go again. Brittany gets out of the truck and finds her place next to Brooke. They mince through the grass in their high-heeled sandals like they're afraid they'll step in something. "Stevie," Brooke warns one of the little cousins, "keep those muddy paws off of me." The two wives have the same big sunglasses, the same crisp, pale clothes. Brittany's skinny, but not as skinny as Brooke. No one can be as skinny as Brooke. They come over and give Mom and Dad hugs, without really touching them. "How you guys doing?" says Brooke. "We've been meaning to come over. How are you getting around?" Mom and Dad look at each other. "Getting around what?" says Dad. Brittany stands with her arms tightly folded. She keeps adjusting the way her bangs lay across her forehead, as if it's the one thing she can do without permission from Brooke. Brooke touches Mom's arm and says, "Tell me you brought your fried chicken." "Sure," says Mom. "You want a piece?" "Oh, no," she says. She pats her flat, featureless tummy, as though that explains her answer. "But I've got to get the recipe. I can't help myself." I say, "Brooke, you can cook?" Brooke fakes a laugh. Dad laughs for real. Mom shoots us a look. "Shelly," coos Brooke. She tiptoes over to me. "Look at you, girl. I can see why you always wear that shirt." She leans in for the no-touch hug and says, "It really slims you down." The two wives sit in the shade and thumb their phones. Derek comes over with his tent. It's a 6-man cabin tent, but it's tucked under his arm like a newspaper. When I was a kid, I loved all my brothers, but Derek was my favorite. He was my happy, big-hearted puppy. But when I got home from college, I finally saw him the way that other people did, and I understood why some people never liked him or were afraid of him. Derek looks at Dad's camper, then our tent, then Terry. Terry's frozen, not even moving. I half expect him to change colors to better blend in with his surroundings. Derek throws his tent down, and I feel the impact of it in the ground. "Terry, why'd you stick your tent right here?" Dad says, "Well, son, it's called camping." Derek snorts, "But if he'd move it 10 feet over, me and Bri could put our tents in here. He's hogging all the room." "We got the whole campground," says Dad. "How much room do you need?" Derek snorts again and glares at Terry. I should be embarrassed when Terry looks down, but I don't even want to think about what would happen if he tried to stand up to Derek. "Nobody needs to be moving tents around in this heat," says Dad. He points across the campground. "Some nice spots by Uncle Ricky's fire pit." "I don't want to sleep by Ricky. He snores." Mom pipes up. "So you, sweetie." Fine. He scoops up the tent. "We're camping over there," he yells at Brian. "Too crowded over here." "See that, Shelly?" says Dad. Blood in the water. "Why is he like that?" I ask. Dad takes his time answering. I honestly don't think he wants to be. Sometimes I think he's just waiting for the world to come along and tell him to knock it off. Derek opens a beer and recruits some kids to set up his tent. He heckles and trips them while they work. Brian sets up his own tent. Derek heckles him too. When they finish, they throw off their shirts and back the trailer down the gravelly beach. The jet skis float free and they climb on. Kids crowd around the shore to watch. Brian turns for open water, but Derek races straight at the kids. When he's 20 feet out, he steers hard left and sprays them all with a big sheet of water. Then he's gone too, and the kids stand dripping as the sound of the machines fade. Terry heads straight for the car, and he's back in 1 minute with his kite bag. It's got special pockets for all the controls and spools. He lays it all out and looks over at the kids, but they're still at the shoreline. He kneels down and works on the kite like he's reviving some huge sleepy bat. It's almost as wide as he is tall. "What's he got over there?" says Dad. I sigh. "It's his kite. Looks like a hang glider." A few kids spot Terry and begin watching him from a distance. He positions the kite and trails the strings across the grass. Stevie and a few other kids wander over. "But there's no wind," says Mom. "It's a special kite," I tell her. "It doesn't need wind." Terry motions the kids to stand back. He says, "Please don't step on the line, okay, you guys?" Stevie stamps on him and then runs off. The rest stick around, asking questions. When everything's ready, Terry puts in his headphones and takes up the paddles. He stands there a moment with his head down, as if what he will do next is important. Then, in step to the music we can't hear, he pulls the controls and shuffles backwards. His belly jiggles like mad, but his movements are weirdly graceful. The kite lifts into the air 50 feet, and the kids cheer. Dad flips up his sunglasses and says, "Would you look at that?" Terry yanks on one handle, and the kite peels off to one side. The kids run, following with upturned faces and arms reaching skyward. A cool breeze starts up, as if conjured by Terry's cryptic motions. Wind shadows ripple and swerve out on the lake. The sweat on my neck turns chilly. The cottonwoods begin to begin to seethe, and Terry puts on a show for us. The kite soars, stalls, plunges down, and plunges down, almost hitting the ground before turning up again. The kids chase it. Terry looks over his shoulder at me, his eyes blaze deliriously through his glasses. This goes on for an hour. I catch up with Mom and Dad, but we pause to clap for the good tricks. Everyone's watching now. The kids have their chairs set up like an audience. Even Brooke and Brittany look up from their phones from time to time. Mom says, I like it when it almost crashes, but he saves it at the last second. Dad says, I like the figure 8. Something is happening out over the lake. Wet air colliding with hot air or cool air colliding with dry. Terry could explain it, but the result is a line of gray-bottom clouds forming on the south side of the lake. The breeze picks up even more, and waves march into shore. The wind is so strong it sends the kite into endless corkscrews. Terry's face is red and he's breathing hard, but just when we think he's out of tricks, he hops over the strings and works the controls behind his back. Uncle Ricky laughs and shakes his head. Only Dad and I notice when Derek and Brian bounce over the waves and glide back into shore. No kids mob them. No one asks for a ride. They beach the jet skis and dry off. Then they come up from the water talking loud, but everyone's watching the kite. Terry brings it low for the kids to pet it. It hovers motionless, a few feet off the ground, and the kids touch it and jerk their hands back like it's a living thing. Then they run away squealing. Derek and Brian stand a ways off, pointing and smirking as if planning what to do about it. They get a football and try to start a game, but no one wants to play. Dad points at the kite and says, "Oh, did you see that one?" But I catch him sneaking glances at the boys. They're tossing the ball, watching Terry. Then Derek motions Brian to go long, and Brian takes off. He jumps over the kids in their seats, and Derek launches the ball. It looks like he's too far away to hit the kite, but the wind carries the ball beyond even Derek's range, and we gasp as it smacks into the kite like a missile. The kite veers over, collapsing. Something in it has snapped. It dives noisily into the grass and flutters there like a wounded pterodactyl. Terry whips around. We all do. All eyes go to Derek. He stands there grinning. Groans rise above the wind. "What?" he shouts. "It was an accident." "Daddy," I hiss, "will you do something?" Daddy holds up his hand, keeps watching. Terry yanks out his headphones and kneels at the crash site, examining the great injured bird. The kids circle in, heads bowed. "Is she broken?" says Maisie. "Nah," says Terry, "she's just fine." When the kite rushes up the wind again, the whole campground roars. The kids hoot. Derek stands in the grass and spits. Then the kite turns and crosses the campground. I look down at Terry. He's on the move, and when he stops, the kite is hovering 20 feet above Derek's head, like the blackest rain cloud or a UFO. Derek sneers and steps to one side. The kite follows. Everyone laughs. My heart is sinking a little. It occurs to me that I was probably never too concerned about Derek humiliating Terry. It was always the opposite that seemed worse. Terry tightens his grips on the handles and makes a move like kung fu. The kite rips down from the sky and sends Derek fleeing and stumbling through the grass. The kite's nylon skin crackles like a machine gun as it tears past him. Derek staggers away, but the kite keeps after him. Derek somehow comes up with the football and flings it at the kite. He manages a glancing blow, but the kite stays up. He dodges, gets the ball again, throws again. The battle goes on until they're out the water. Mom and Dad stand up and head to shore. We all do. "Bring it down," barks Derek. He's panting and he's got grass stuck to his face. He seats the football in his big hand. "Give me one clean shot." Terry stands with his back to the water. He lowers the kite so that it hovers in front of Derek, rattling like crazy. Derek fakes a throw. The kite doesn't move. He launches the ball, and the kite leaps clear. The ball spirals out over the lake and splashes down. Everybody cheers. The kids are hopping and clapping. They crowd around Terry. Uncle Ricky runs over and pats him on the back. Dad turns to me. "See that, Shelley?" Derek stands with his back to us, watching his football. It's found some current in the lake that runs counter to the wind, and it edges away onto the open expanse of water, as if it had only been waiting for its chance to strike out alone. Terry shows Uncle Ricky how to work the kite, and then hands over the controls. Uncle Ricky tugs the paddles, and it wobbles through a couple of turns. "Would you look at that?" laughs Uncle Ricky. Maisie climbs up into Terry's arms and reaches into the sky after the kite. "Oh, she's freezing," says Terry. Mom says, "I've got some jackets in the trailer." "That's okay," I say. I slip my arm around Terry's waist. "We've got some over in the car." Thanks. Thanks. So just one more, and this is a little bit newer. It's sort of still dripping with, that amniotic fluid. Just a couple. These other ones are maybe a year or two old. This one's a little bit newer. And again, if you're feeling it, I don't want you to show it. Just reach over, put your arm around her, him, whoever's over there. And I hope you did. I hope you felt something. I hope you're moved, and I hope you enjoy this one. This one's called Just Wait for the Answer. This girl is so quiet. You may have misjudged just how quiet she really is. There are things you know about her, things you don't. She listens to classical music, can ride a horse, ambivalent about seafood, trivia mostly. But there's one thing you know for sure, that she's quiet. But there's nothing you can do about that now. Your time is up. She puts on her coat and together you go out into the night and the rain in the parking lot. Tonight was great, you tell her. The girl nods and grins. That's all she does. The asphalt shines in the darkness like a great spill of ink. You walk her to the car and open the door and she gets in. Rush around to the other side and you get in. Street lamps glimmer, wet and bleary through the windows. For a few seconds you don't look over. She's there in the passenger seat and you figure maybe she'll say something if you can keep yourself from looking over. But she doesn't. And so you do, and when your eyes meet, she looks away. There is no more than 8 inches separating the two of you. No sound but the rain. It makes a noise like radio static. To fill up the quiet, you begin to talk at her. And you keep talking for a while. Sure got cold in a hurry. It was gorgeous this afternoon. She peers up through the window at the wet black sky as if to confirm this. Oh, my stupid car, you continue. It fogs up so bad, I'm sorry. You wipe the windshield with your palm, then switch on the defroster. I have to run the defroster and the AC at the same time when it gets like this. Yeah, the evaporator fins in the AC unit condense the moisture out of the air like a dehumidifier. It's a trick I learned. Yeah, it's starting to work already. There's really not that much difference between a dehumidifier and an air conditioner. You're not entirely sure if that's true. But she laughs. You know of no other sound you would rather listen to. Hearing it makes you laugh. And then you sit quietly again in the watery light as the defroster breathes a rough and continuous sigh. A raindrop creeps down from the top edge of the windshield, joining nearby droplets until it becomes a rivulet that courses down and out of sight like a tear. This girl has said nothing and is apparently content to keep doing so. You gnaw at the inside of your cheek to stop yourself from lecturing further on the physics of automobile climate control. Maybe a laugh or a glance from this girl holds more meaning than that of another. You recalibrate because there's something you plan to tell her, something heavy. You love the girl. She probably knows, but it's time you said it to her. You rehearsed it earlier so that it will come out right. This didn't go very well. It felt dishonest to manufacture a moment between two people, to force it into the open that way. But you want it to happen right. So you're gauging the mood and you want to know how she'll answer. So you're trying to find the right place to begin, like a pilot. Reading the wind and searching for somewhere to land. You scan the landscape of her. You know, I was surprised, you tell her. I never thought you'd be into a stupid movie like that. She shifts in her seat. Or maybe that was a shrug, or some other cryptic utterance of body language that you failed to catch. It was fun, she admits. She looks at you. Right. It wasn't too bad, the movie I mean. It was okay. Yeah, it really was. So, you breathe. Tomorrow. She only nods. But when you look at her, she doesn't turn away. You turn in your seat to face her, turn off the defroster, and remove your hat. You speak her name. Then you tell her, I love you. I do. And I've been wanting to say it. Then you nod, once, as if to punctuate it, as if to let her know that you're through speaking for the time being. Or maybe forever. At this point, it's hard to say. Because it didn't come out exactly the way you rehearsed. There was something you wanted to say beforehand to transition into it. There was a cadence to it. But the moment has been created and it begins to unfold around you. And it unfolds around the girl. She played a role in it, is still playing a role. And so you discover that any such moment must be forced into existence. Or else it couldn't exist at all. Like a line of words in a love letter or a parting embrace. They're intentional acts to to be shared between two people, even if only for a short time. The girl puts her face in her hand and cries. She cries because she leaves tomorrow. In the morning she'll be gone, and you will likely never be together again. You haven't decided what this means or what can be done about it. So you take her in your arms, and you hold her, and you keep holding her for a while. She squeezes you hard, buries her face in your shirt. You breathe in the smell of her, and pull her softness against you. Through her sobs, she whispers your name, and you feel it on your neck. If you lose her, it will be months before you can appreciate the cost of it. The pain will last much longer. Some of it will never go away. But there's one more thing you learn in the dim light of that inky parking lot. Love is a girl sobbing on your neck. And the price of love is loneliness. When the girl settles back into the passenger seat, your shoulder is damp. She sniffs, wipes her face with her fingertips, and says nothing. All is quiet but for the rain. It streaks the windows. Your cheeks grow hot, and you watch the girl for signs. She sits still, arms folded across her middle. Her back is straight, head tilted forward. On her face, an expression that is neither smile nor frown. You cannot see her eyes beneath her long eyelashes. If there is any signal in her stillness, you lack the ability to infer it. Then she looks up. Her arms unfold, and her hands come to rest in her lap. One soft petal cradled in the other. Her gaze meets yours, and her lips part. She draws a breath. And if you think what you had to say was heavy, just wait for the answer. Thanks. Thanks, Cameron.
Yeah. There's only alternates left at this point. So, okay. So now we're going to just jump right into the open mic reading. Thank you. That was great, Chad.
Thank you.
Yes,
Really good work. Okay. So about the list, can I explain briefly? If I screw this up, I want some help with this. But the reason for the email addresses is to get a hold of Jesse, or so Jesse can get a hold of you. Can you explain what this is?
I'm interviewing people who read at Helicon West for a collection, The People of Helicon West, and so if you want to be a part of that, I need your email address.
So yeah, so I noticed that most of you didn't leave your email address on this. Okay, good. Yeah, we've got some who did. If you want to do that, this will still be floating around, and definitely put your name on it and get your email address on there. Okay, so if I screw up your name, it's your fault because you have bad handwriting or I can't read. So we'll do that. So I'll just read 3 names, and then we'll go to that point, and then I'll read 3 more. Yes.
We're wondering when 7.
Oh yes, please 7 minutes. Don't make me cut you off because I'm large and intimidating. So try and keep it down to 7 minutes if you can. Yeah. Okay. So the first 3 readers are going to be Jay Anderson, Craig Marlin, I think, and Diane Hardy. So we'll go to there. Okay.
Hello.
Hi, Jay.
Hi. I'm going to read one poem. It is called The Alter Ego of Acceptance. I wrote it a couple of years ago. I like to think that behind the veil there is one specific reality. The one that is unafraid to compose several states of mind, no matter which ones are culturally accepted or not. A true explorer, he will be labeled, strapped to the sails of a ship that travel without destination. He admittedly wanders without anything to look for, not even a mythical four-headed reptilian creature of sorts, the kind that teach us to be cautious, you know. Rather, he is fearless in that he explores in a valley of nothingness, letting only his perception of what he takes to be true as his guide. I would like to study the mannerisms of this man, and in some respects, model my life after him, without distorting his intentions. But I suppose we know from the past of mankind that this feat is nearly impossible.
Okay, this is called August 5th. I wrote it last Halloween. Okay. It's been years since anything has resembled a sun. There are white specks like the stars on Earth, but no overwhelming presence of power so near to command the day and the night. 64 years as the world reckons I've been flying for Andromeda, the nearest chance we have to find another world like our own. I was 23 when I left, so that plus 64 means I am 87 years old. The life monitoring system says I'm 87 years and 43 days old, but I like to do the math myself, even if I be a little off. I believe the water tastes strange or different, but I can't remember how it's supposed to be. I imagine new constellations, new friends and faces to keep me company, my only pastime apart from the computer. At least I have one window, one thing to remind me I'm not lost in a psychological state, out of, disenchanted from, my mind. I'm more of a seed than an explorer, dropped from the mother world, a grain continually falling, falling in the directionless space. I'm a biological process now, not an independent thinker. I won't last much longer, only the respirator keeps me inhaling now. I can focus on my breath and meditate all day long. I'm sure my brain will be smooth and flat when this is all done. Before I lose the texture of my neurology, I will make one last choice, one more strike of evidence for free will. I will turn off the dioxide in my chamber so my eyes will never dry out. As long as I can see, I wouldn't mind being dead. With moments of life, I reposition in the cockpit. I want my hands locked onto the steering device. And when I hit some orbiting rocky sphere, the spores of my gut fauna may yet be viable. I'm not alive, but my hands still clasp like an angry crawdad. The probability of me being found isn't worth the calculation. Infinity has a way of destroying the realm of chance. And when I am found, and the things that wonder what, as hard as I wondered where, will find a man with blue eyes looking straight ahead. The posture induced by rigor mortis won't lie about the discomfort of sitting in even the most comfortable chair forever. I wish I could take one more swim in a cool mountain lake. Maybe a meadowlark would sing near me. Perhaps a leaf would fall in front of me. I could be clean again, a cleanliness that is relatively real and familiar. I could feel the cold water and the pain on my feet from rocks, and I could live once more before I die.
It's fine. Yeah, I think so. Can you hear me? Yes. I've got a loud voice. Necessity is the mother of invention. I woke one fall morning in 1953. I'd slept 9 hours on my stomach and my chest felt sore. Maybe something's bitten me, I thought, yanking off my pajama top. The mirror showed no bite marks, but my nipples looked nearly red and puffy. I tentatively touched one, then the other. Each had what felt like an apple core under them. I'm getting grown-up breasts and I'm only 10. They hurt a little, but it wasn't like falling off my bike or Mary pulling my hair. Still, the situation bore watching, and I examined them daily with a mix of apprehension and excitement. Within a couple of months, the nipples grew bigger and the flesh around them filled out, forming 2 small bumps. They felt irritated as they rubbed against my dress, so I started wearing a petticoat. By December, I definitely needed a bra, but didn't dare approach the subject with Mama. When she asked what I wanted for Christmas, I said, underclothes. What? You're asking for clothes this year? You've never done that, Diane. Guess you're growing up. Yes, I am, I replied, thinking of the new Polaroid Instamatic camera that I wouldn't be asking for. On television, it was touted as capturing a smile when it happens. But I'd have to be content with my old Kodak Brownie box camera. Asking for 2 items would divert attention. Christmas morning, I received books, crafts, and 4 rolls of film. Santa Claus, bless his heart, gave me clothes. 2 dresses, a sweater, 4 pair of panties, and 2 petticoats, but no bra. Mary got 3, which she carelessly tossed aside, focusing on her gold Jansen skirt and sweater set. Going back to school after Christmas break, I decided to take a poll of who was wearing a bra. It was easy to determine because you could see the outline under clothing. I counted girls with bras, 11. Then I counted girls without them, 4 of us. Susan and Marie didn't matter, being flat as pancakes, but Margaret counted. She was braless like me. I got her alone at lunchtime and told her my story. Same here, Diane, and I can't tell my mother either. Well, Mary wears bras, I said. I could steal an old one, but she'd see me in it. I thought on it hard and came up with a solution a few days later. As principal, Daddy always drove our 1949 Ford to and from school. A pillow had been left in the back seat, a remnant from a Salt Lake trip. The next morning, I walked to school with one of Mary's bras tucked between my arithmetic book and a Nancy Drew mystery. Margaret was delighted. We'd store the bra between the pillow and the case. I'd get it in the morning, Margaret in the afternoons. We could make the change at noon in the bathroom. She'd take it off after school and I'd hide it again, simple as that. We traded the bra for months, only missing one day when Daddy took the car to a meeting in Duchesne. Each week it got dirtier, a fact we tried to ignore because neither of us could take it home to launder. By April, the bra was filthy, having changed color from white to gray to spotted to black. Mornings, stiff and scratchy as a board. Afternoons, wet and sticky. Plus it stunk to high heaven, a hybrid of BO and halitosis. Diane, if we smell this, other people do too, Margaret gagged. Let's try washing it in the bathroom after school today, I suggested. Working up a lather with cold water and flaky dispenser soap was a challenge, plus we couldn't collect the water without a sink plug. Finally, Margaret pushed the nozzle non-stop, and I made a small lather. This'll work if I scrub really hard, I said, rubbing and slapping the bra against the sink. Gradually, the black water cleared, leaving the bra a dull whitish gray. We cheered loudly, but then noticed large rips in the flimsy material. I'm afraid this cloth is rotted, I said. Now what? Asked Margaret. I can't hang it on the clothesline without my mother seeing. Can you take it home, Diane? Mama never notices anything, but Mary and I share a bedroom. Not only will she recognize it, she'll beat me up. There's not much danger of her claiming it, Margaret laughed, her body shaking in rhythm. Look at it! We dried it the best we could with paper towels and hung it on a nail by the shower. The next morning we ran to discover it gone. The janitor must have mistaken this for a rag, Margaret. Yeah, she looked at me closely. I'm relieved. Me too, I laughed. I was ready to stop a month ago, but thought you'd be disappointed. Besides, there's only a month of school left. Our family shopped in Salt Lake for school clothes in the fall. Mama said, I think you need a brassiere, Diane. We'll get a couple.
Great, thank you. Joseph didn't bring that in, did he? Oh, I probably didn't write up. It's okay. Okay, so next we're going to hear from Josh McDermott. Welcome back. It's good to see you. So, Phil Boyd, is it two names or is it my... Phil Boyd is one name. Oh, my partner. Okay. Stodge, and then Tyler Esperlin. Oh, sorry, I missed one.
Yeah, you totally skipped me.
All right, I meant Brittany in the between there. Okay. Should I just give up and run away? Okay. No. So we're gonna go Josh McDermott. I'll tell you why I skipped you because I was so worried about Phil Boyd, the name. Like I was like going over and over again in my head, and so I just screwed it up. And then Brittany McDonald, who's great and a former student of mine. I really like her stuff. And then so it goes Josh, Brittany, Phil Boyd, Tyler. Okay, we'll go there. Okay, so I'll shut up.
Howdy.
Hi, Josh.
Hey.
So, my girlfriend and I are starting a small publishing press. So these are some early copies of the books we're doing. We're also doing one by Tyler, one by Ruin. But I'm going to read from two little ones of mine. First, these are two poems about Sierra Leone and West Africa. This one's called In Sierra Leone, the Americans Drank Star Beer at the Graceland Bar. In Sierra Leone, the Americans drank Star Beer at the Graceland Bar. In Africa, the Graceland Bar, which was a few white painted tables, and the black children watched the Americans drink the Star Beers, and I walked home through the palm trees down the sand paths where the Americans walked with their Star Beers in Africa, on the sand paths where two topless women waved to me each day, topless, where I walked by on the sand paths in Africa. I drank Star Beers, and the black children in their torn American clothes were caned in the doorways of their broken houses. And the two young girls I called my sisters in Africa, my sisters, the two young girls who I saw beaten, swollen in their daily work at the broken stalls market of flies, the children in the tattered clothes, hernia belly buttons, and the flies in Africa, where my sisters, white smiles, danced with me by candlelight, the only time at night when they didn't have to work at the market, dirt-covered bread, and wandering through the city one day I saw them in Africa, not far from the Graceland Bar, where the other Americans drank Star Beers. I saw my two young sisters with the buckets of bread and fish on their heads for the sandy path markets, broken stalls. The children in tattered clothes were calling out my name, and calling out my name, the tattered children, asking me to be their friend, to bring them gifts. Their hernia stomachs, tattered clothing, beaten in their doorways, all-day markets. I saw my two young sisters, the evening walking home, burnt garbage, sweating. In Africa, I saw my two young sisters, and I called out to them, my sisters, my family, I love you. This one's called In the Humid Afternoon. In the humid afternoon, I sat under a thatched roof within the training compound, an old school named Matco, rented out by the U.S. government, surrounded by barbed wire fence, populated with the shells of UN Army jeeps, the Civil War only 11 years off, the ground filled with glass, metal, bullet casings. I sat there in the humidity and listened as an American man spoke about community development and acronyms, and the other Americans in their chairs beside me dozed off and looked at their watches, surrounded by fences made of brick, barbed wire, and broken glass. Under the thatched roof, bullet casings under our feet, I sat there. I sat there in the humidity, the Civil War 11 years off, for the whole day, as an American spoke in acronyms, an old school named Matco, surrounded by barbed wire fence, glass, metal, bullet casings, outside of which the families grew their rice in the ditch bank. The families rode motorcycles of former child soldiers into town, outside of which the children died of unknown things. I sat there in Matco. I sat there in Matco all day looking at my watch, shells of UN Army jeeps 11 years off in the community development class. The child soldiers were an acronym. The families grew their rice for sustenance. The humid afternoon, again, I sat there in the old school American. I sat there, and the children died of unknown things. When, behind the teacher, a hole in the wall, I noticed a group of young girls waving to me. It was Titi and Christiana and the other young girls on their way back from selling, and they were waving to me. Me, an American, glass, bullet casings, metal through a hole in the wall. They were waving at me in their dirty clothes, their big wide eyes, their big smiles. They were waving at me. And so I made a face, and they laughed. And so they made a face, and I laughed. And the Americans didn't notice, and the teacher didn't notice. In the humid afternoon, through a hole in the wall, big wide eyes, big smiles, barbed wire, bricks, and broken glass, we laughed the Civil War 11 years off. Just one more quick one. This is from a book I'm doing all about Idaho. It's called Jesus Christ Lives in Idaho. He gained a reputation for talking back to police officers, for teaching kids to disobey their parents, for telling old women to lighten up. It got so bad that city council had a meeting just to decide what to do about him. In the end, they got him on trumped-up pot charges. I was there, man. I know it was bullshit. Since then, I hear he took off for the mountains. I hear he's living near the snake out there somewhere, growing out his beard, caring for sick pelicans, and plotting his return.
Sorry.
Okay, so I know you guys are all tired of hearing about my bladder, so I want you to know. I went to the bathroom before I came, but then Chad started reading and I was like, oh crap. It's happening again, I'm terrified. But I went and I'm good. Okay, I'm gonna get uncomfortable more than that. That was an icebreaker. My first poem's called The Lizard Man. The first time I met you, and the first time you took me home, I didn't realize. The first tour of your basement with windows, the first introduction to stuffed collections, the first time your head hit my shoulder and I thought, I didn't want this. I didn't know. I was caught up, I was a frenzy in heels, I was trying to kiss you back. The second time I met you, the second time you took me home, I couldn't escape it. You jumped to put your lips on mine, and all I could smell was your lizard, except it was you. The second time you went for my gold, I realized I don't kiss lizards. I might not even like lizards. I certainly didn't like your scaled lips or your reptilian hand crawling between my legs and resting there as if I was your sun lamp. I certainly didn't like the fact that you didn't smell human. The first time I forsook it, but the second time I became your cricket. All right, I have one more. This one's called The Woman. There is an ache in between at the top of my thighs. It is the woman, sprung up without my permission. She wants to be fed, she wants to be loved, she is tired of my hands, knows all of my tricks. I can feed her, but we both know I can't fill her. That takes fingers bigger than mine, fingers neither of us control, and fingers that are hopefully a prelude to what I definitely do not have. The woman craves, and when she craves, she does not let me sleep in peace. She sprains my wrists and cracks my jaw because I try and try and try to take away her ache, but I only make it worse. I try to tell her if she can't get along without a man, what kind of woman is she? I try to tell her that her ache was my ache first and she's being selfish. And I try to tell her that I look as best I can, but the only men who want her right now smell like lizards and bite like maggots. The woman doesn't like to listen. The woman who aches in between at the top of my thighs is beautiful. The woman deserves more than secondhand ads, than going home with strangers, than begging on her knees. The woman is mine, but she does not listen to me. The woman is mine, but she does not listen to me.
Sorry, I didn't realize Philboy would be so difficult.
No, I'm an idiot. It's my fault. Sorry.
This first one's called Things Floating in Dark. Celestial objects are obviously incapable of sentience, or they exist in this universe's greatest agony, forced to bear witness to all the atrocities committed beneath them, too far away to do anything but but cry silent upon us. It's called I Didn't Watch Groundhog Day on Groundhog Day. Chimera, no wonder so ugly, seemingly more prisoner than the regular flesh, blood and bone. Some bitter course, so wouldn't matter, but the mountains are so beautiful. Hurt and hard heart and clear castle collapsible. Mervyn would still be proud, because probably doesn't know the depression's warranted for a dipstick of such noble proportion. Immersion brought beleaguered breathing, or at least they happened simultaneously. Who can detect direct causes these days anyways? It's all goddamn god puke, the only bird special at Universal Restaurant, where deja vu is the only thing on the menu that's even slightly edible, where I'm just hella disassociated and or some other convenient DSM diagnosis. So no, this isn't a riddle. I put it as simple as possible. How do you convey to friends when you feel conversations useless posturing, vocalized misperceptions of an illusion no one has any choice but to buy into, all of us howling our meaninglessness? No wonder we're so addicted to justifications, anything to not remember our prisons. Why I was drinking Brass Monkey out the ancient scenic visage glass, tragic because 2 was once 3, still singing heartbroken about it, pathetic, giving up my secrets. Everyone already knows I'm afraid of the dark and stupid, desperate to fit in, then fang bitter when it won't happen. Inevitable, the impossibility of being human. Why couldn't I have been a bird instead?
Hey everybody.
Hi, Tyler.
It's been a while. I'm glad to be back here. Josh mentioned that I do have a collection of poems coming out very shortly. It's called World War Infinity. I just want to read a couple of poems from that collection. This first one is called The Pastor Ties the Tourniquet. I hope you remember the day we melted wax Jerusalem down to a puddle of stones and sinners, and we pulled a styrofoam Jesus figurine from the wreckage like Cortez's gold. I would brush your hair out of your face and you would smile and laugh flowers. As we stand naked in a field of lemongrass, you'll blow kisses to me and to the moon. You and me are hurricanes and 3 a.m. phone calls to nowhere phone booths where poets set roses on fire. I'll light a candle to you and set it out to sea. I talked with the new Jesus Christ for years about apocalypse and became John the Baptist and you're the Magdalene Mary. We'll feed the children whiskey and give them rock and roll and shake our fists at the stars with no idea why. A giant mechanical Icarus will part the Baltic with feathers clenched inside his rusting jaws. The branches bend in false decay and you, O Lady of constant salvation, take off your clothes. Mary, please absolve my sins, for more than once I've stolen youth from sunsets in quiet, drunk basements, and I beg my forgiveness on my knees at your altar, naked as Adam and twice as ashamed. Oh Gina, your lovers will dissolve into statuettes, but I'll still be here with sunlight whispers and backseat cigarettes and bundles of sagebrush forever after midnight. Amen. This poem is called Acid Skin. Mea culpa, mea maxima culpa, because Lord, I am sin and I ache for salvation, and Hail Mary, full of grace, because I spend my Saturdays in whorehouses and my Sundays in churches, and maybe I scaled the wrong tree and I'm eating poison fruit, but something is wrong here, and oh Lord, I'm no saint, no prophet in the lepers, but I'm trying. Then this is my last poem tonight. It's called Terminus. It's this wicked whiskey symmetry and improper geometry followed a savior to hell through high water. I offered him a bottle of hollow and he called me a miracle. But I'm jaded, impatient, and history is vicious misery imagined so perfectly by ostracized dreamers lost in the prophecy. My words come in circles, they flee through the Holocene, back to manic Latin and plastic vernacular. It seems meaningless, screaming through a heliosequence, mute and stupid, blind and brainless, when it's rained for days and it's train wrecks. Our last heroes only echo in carved marble, hard and homeless, and old stone immortal, grown tired of poses. Erupting from ashtrays, plain and archaic, waking and praying for a day to come when fences become irrelevant. And motion is just lack of static. The ocean is potent and restless and never-ending and broken teeth and aimless envy. It's masquerade, it's patriarchy, blaming the artist for holding the mirror to the face of those who bloomed in the ruin. And it hurts to burn pages of poetry, but it's freeing the ache and the yearning to rebirth unearthly so in empty space wasteland. A cigarette illuminates the shape of my lungs, painful and hungry and ancient. The organ's melody is yelling heavenly obscenities, martyr and whore and devil may care. I'm destroying the void in a maelstrom of noise, such righteous violence, the silence is justified by the riots. Then the world goes quiet, mortified by the war, existing in the nightmares of street preacher fearmongers. And the crows reach a crescendo, screeching to a metronome of sin and bones and stereos. Time twists the minutes. Its business is finished. Thank you.
Okay, next we will have Marianne, and then Star, the matron of Helicon, or something, I don't know.
Thank you,
It's
Ross.
clever. And then Caitlin Erickson, so we'll go up to that point.
Okay, this is good. So, if you were here last week, I have like a million siblings, and by a million I mean 13. But this is part of my thesis, and I think this starts, and my family's going to the hospital. My mom's had her last child, and I know something's wrong, but my dad's not communicating with me, so I don't know what's wrong. So, and I'm 21 at this point, so I'm not like a kid or anything. Okay. The crisp October air feels like small icy fingers on my face as I help the younger kids out of the Suburban. We use the emergency room entrance, since it's the only door open this late, and we follow a long corridor to the elevators. We look a mess compared to the sterile white walls and just vacuumed carpet. My hair spills out of its ponytail holder, Devin's camouflage print hoodie clashes with his plaid pajama bottoms, and one of Reagan's pant legs is tucked into a boot, the other pulled over the boot. We tramp down the hall, spanning the width of the corridor, chasing away the silence of nurses floating through the hallways in purple and blue scrubs. Dad leads us down the hall without a word, or a glance backward. When we reach the elevators that will take us to labor and delivery, Dad finally turns to Jen and Randy. "You know why we're here, right?" he asks. I look down at my scuffed white shoes and thread my thumbs through the belt loops of my jeans. Of course I don't know why we're here. I can only guess. But I lift my head and nod. Yeah, it comes out as a whisper. Dad nods back and pushes the call button, his thin lips drawn into the faintest defiance. I count my siblings as they step into the elevator. 1, 2, 3, 6, 9, 10, 11. I step on last and hit the button for level 3. A woman in bright pink scrubs opens the double doors to the maternity ward before we pick up the phone to request entrance. "They're just down this hall," she says, smiling over her clipboard. "Just follow me." I expect her to lead us to one of the patient rooms, but she walks past them. The 2-minute walk down the hall takes forever. My heart pounds into my throat, and I have to remind myself to breathe. We enter a spacious room with heavy white curtains, partitioning off smaller areas. The nurse draws back a set of the curtains and beckons for us to step forward. Mom sits in a wheelchair, wearing an ugly purple and white floral hospital gown. Her eyes are red and sunken in against deep purple shadows. She's talking to a nurse who's washing a newborn baby. "I think his hair is kind of red," she says. "Maybe. It's hard to tell in this light," the nurse replies, dipping a washcloth into a metal basin of water. She wrings it out and continues washing the infant, baby Jackson. He lies on a low table, clear tubes inserted into his nostrils. The nurse dresses him in a soft blue sleeper and a striped hat. "Are you ready to take him off?" she asks Mom. Mom nods, and I understand what Dad didn't communicate earlier. Mom will be going home with us, but Jackson won't. I let out a long sigh that I will pay for again and again. The nurse unhooks the oxygen, scoops Jackson off the table, and places him in Mom's arms. She pulls the partition around us and promises to be back in half an hour with Dr. Evans. Jackson isn't supposed to be able to breathe on his own for more than a few minutes, but when the nurse comes back, he's still breathing. "Sometimes they're tough and surprise us," Dr. Evans says. "You can bring him into your room. I think everyone will be more comfortable there." The nurse pushes Mom down the hall we came through, and we all follow single file, heads bowed. My siblings have observed this perfect formation only once before, following a long blue box through the halls of our church building. The occasion may be different, but the feeling is the same. The hospital room would be silent but for Jackson. Dr. Evans says that Jackson feels no pain, but I don't believe him. No one sounds like Jackson and doesn't feel pain. His breaths are long and ragged, as if he is breathing through a straw, and his chest moves visibly with the effort. He's a tiny thing, but his breathing fills the room clear to the corners, until there is nothing but his breathing. My siblings and I sit on the semicircle of folding chairs the nurses brought in after helping Mom to bed. Mom sits upright in her hospital bed, smoothing her fingers across Jackson's forehead as Dad holds him in the chair next to the bed. I think everyone should get a chance to hold him, she says. Marianne, you need to hold him first. Dad stands up, walking across the room towards me. I automatically hold out my arms and take Jackson, even though I'm not sure I want to hold him. His breathing grows louder now that he's in my arms, and I find myself breathing with him. His body trembles beneath my hands like the orphan kitten I tried to save when I was 13. I'd found him in the neighbor's milking barn, mewing and burrowing into straw. His ribs showed through tufts of gray fur, his eyes not yet open. I took him home in the pocket of my hoodie and fed him milk replacer from a bottle as big as he was. At night, he cried more loudly than a creature of his size and strength should be able. I moved him from the heating pad and placed him on my chest above my heart, covering him with my hand. He quieted, but shivered through the night. Afraid I would crush him in my sleep, I stayed awake most of the night. In the morning, he wouldn't eat. His mouth open and closed, and his throat strained as if he were crying, but no sound came out. His breath shuddered through his body, and I held him in the crook of my arm and whispered that everything would be all right. I tried not to let my tears wet his fur. Within minutes, his breath slowed and stopped. I can't sit here and wait for this rattling breath, Jackson's breath, to stop. I hand him off to Katie and slip into the hall and text my boss that I will not make my 4 a.m. custodial shift. When I look up from the screen, my grandparents, Dad's parents, are walking down the hall. Grandma dabs at her eyes and nose with a white cloth handkerchief edged in blue lace. She's the only person I know who still uses one. She squeezes my arm when she gets to me. Are we too late, Grandpa asks. I don't think so, I say. They're still in the room. I'm going to look for a drinking fountain. I take my time finding the fountain, and when I do, I press the cold aluminum button and watch the water arc from the spout to the drain. Listen to the flowing sound of running water. I used to do this as a child, but then a young boy with sun-bleached hair and sticky fingers would stand at the fountain side, his mouth open brown to catch the stream of water. My lips twitch into a faint smile that fades before it starts. That little boy is waiting in the hospital room with my family.
That was beautiful, Marianne, as usual. She's writing a memoir for her thesis. That's what that's from. So, Chad, those were 3 of my favorites, but as I think back about it, every damn one of them is one of my favorites. So, great reading. And thanks, Russ, for being MC. Hasn't tonight been great with all the big variety of reading? Josh, it's so great to have you here. And how much are those books?
They're going to probably be $12. We're still working on getting some inventory.
Okay, so we can't really buy one tonight? Okay, but you can ask me, everyone. I live in the Writing Center, Ray West 104, and so if you want one of those books, let me know, and I will get that order to Josh, and we'll fix you up with one of those books, okay? Good stuff, everybody. So I'll just read 3 short poems. These are poems from December. Young. This morning the amaryllis opens, orange veins like sunset beams, intense at the core, widening out on the edges of pink-tinged petals. Friendship proves itself once again in the spread of a blossom. One friend's dying, one revived. Young friends bolster and remind us we were once exuberantly sensual, sensually reckless, filled with ourselves, Now we fill ourselves with their hope for a better future. Not one ruined by sold-out hippies and religion junkies, greedmongers and world fuckers, the power, money, glory of older generations, only a few of whom are in charge of us all. We defer to youth, throw a saddle over their hopeless backs, and ride into our own sunset. God, that was kind of depressing. I have two poems about amaryllis, and I guess I forgot that, well, one of them was kind of depressing, and the other one is in this shape, so you might have to guess what that is. But I'll read bucket in between. Bucket. Don't Mondays come around fast? And don't the weeks just roll on by like barrels of bad chemicals, make you want to kick them, but not too hard? Months also. I just turned the calendar page to November and changed the vacuum bag, and here it is December again. Whole years fall into line like railroad tracks over the horizon. It won't take long for us to be gone, our kids taking up the mark of trouble and finding their own remedies, as if they already knew how and were just waiting for us to kick the bucket. So far, we've only stubbed our toe on it. The bucket is galvanized, made up of strong and weak components, prone to rust and dense, but full of apples, full of water, full of all we put into it and then some. No need to empty it. Someone else can lift it for us if we lose too much muscle. We'll lose too much. Someone should come by on a Monday, first of the month. Help us lift it. And I wanted to thank Brittany for those wonderful poems. Wasn't this like a night of love poems, all of them? Love and angst and misery, and all the bleeding, like Chad said. I just wanted to get out my X-Acto knife and go to work. This one's called Amaryllis. Jumps out of the soil, thick and supple as a tumescent penis. By the way, I wanted to mention, since Diane was talking about breasts, this goes right along, right? No blossom yet, just the spearhead shape at the top, a fat curve for easy insertion if you have a matching slot. But soon, the separation into buds occurs and the shaft begins to lean ever so slightly toward the light. You turn and turn the pot to keep the stalk as straight as upright gets and wait for the burst into flowers, a beauty not to be fathomed before it happens, not even to be guessed.
So Star, I'm pretty sure you just made me like blush horrifically. So. I'm super red. That's why. I wasn't expecting that. Okay. I'm taking a poetry class, so I'm going to read some poetry, and it's actually kind of depressing. So hopefully I'll start laughing because that would just be inappropriate. Album. This is also a prose poem. Okay, album. Last night, I clicked through pictures of friend Snap for her introduction to photography class, stopping at the one where Cameron squeezes my shoulder and kisses my cheek, his face almost in profile, his hair shielding his ear. Our faces are young, thin, with blurred eyes, my hair swept into a 3-day ponytail, bra straps peeking from a black camisole. We're sloppy, disheveled. I remember we woke to the knock on the door and threw on clothes that sat heaped on the floor. But my eyes slink into slits and my smile splits my face. It's the picture I always meant to frame. When he left, I listened to the sing-song of his voicemail over and over, trying to transcribe his tone to a place I wouldn't forget. Of course it didn't work. It faded like stars overwhelmed by city lights. His face went too, and the feel of his hair brushing against my shoulder, and his hand resting over mine on the gear shift as we drove the 250 miles through winding mountain passes and stretches of cow pasture that marked the way from school to home. The girl in the picture has faded too. Her face is fuller now. She no longer poses for pre-breakfast portraits in thin camisoles and muted hair. She's never smiled so wide since.
Okay, and this next poem is on a completely different vein. It's from the point of view of Eve. Day. Eve. I admit, I took the fruit, held it heavy in my hand, felt the skin firm and smooth under my fingertips, and bit its flesh, juice dewing on my lips, dribbling down my neck, sticky sugar trail gleaming. I ask you to lick it off, and you do, gripping my wrists, tongue rough against my neck. You make me drop the fruit into tall grass, my bite a white crescent in pluming red. Don't worry, I'll take the blame. I fell first, after all. And then the last one I have is called Thaw. We sit on knotted benches in the steam-soaked rental hut of a small-town skating rink, breath-puffing steam as we lace worn skates to our feet. College students in faded hoodies and kids in puffed-up parkas surround us, fill the air with chatter and condensed breath. Outside, the air, dry, cold, cracking, pulls bodies close. Our skates glide over ice, lacerated with cuts and curls of the blades before ours, powdered snow scattering in the breeze. You coax me along, your voice smooth to counteract the panic notes of mine. Just look a few feet ahead, you say. Look where you want to end up. I wobble toward the goal, an evergreen-shaded black under streetlights. I fear the snap of fractures and the stretch of sprains that come with the inevitable fall. I fear dragging you onto the ragged ice with me. But you skate next to me, matching my erratic glides, our hands laced, fingers frozen. At home, you drip soft wax onto my back as I lay spread across my sheets like Venus of Urbino. It melts ice in my muscles, warmth spreading like steam. You aim wax at my spine. Heat blooms like forget-me-nots. Only sleep, twisted in check sheets, I lay on your chest and listen to your heartbeat pulsing like purrs against your ribs. My palm resting on your stomach, thaws. Thank you.
Okay, unfortunately, it doesn't look like we're going to have time for alternates tonight, because we have two left. Yeah, right? Yeah, okay. So the last are going to be Jeremy and Scott. So, okay.
Woo.
Matthias stared across the council chamber. The governor stared back from the great stone chair at the other end. "What do you want now, Piedmon?" the governor sneered. "I've come for payment," Matthias answered. "Payment for what?" The governor coughed into his damp sleeve. "The agreement was that I would be paid in full when the rats were gone." "The agreement was that you would get rid of the rats. You played a flute. It's a pipe, actually, and the rats are gone." The governor turned to the councilmen sitting across them, around him in their wooden chairs. "There have been no sightings since yesterday," the nearest said. "It would seem the rats have left." "And the cause?" the governor demanded. "Perhaps a shift in the climate," said another councilman. "Migrating predators? Or a disease," added the third. The governor shifted in his seat as he eyed the third man. "Then it has nothing to do with this man and his pipe. Our sciences give no indication that music would have any effect on the rodent population," the chief councilman said. "Well, there you are," the governor said, waving a hand in Matthias' direction. "Still, let it not be said that the men of Hamlin are unfair in their dealings. Council, pay the piper." The chief councilman tossed a single coin across the room. It clattered on the stone at Matthias' feet. "This was not the agreement," Matthias said. "The agreement was for you to get rid of the rats," the governor said, "not to lay about amusing yourself until they went away." "There must be payment," Matthias said, "or there will be consequences." "You have no power to threaten here, Piedmon, and you are no longer welcome in Hamlin. I will waste no more time with you." The councilman stood. Matthias turned, leaving the coin on the floor. I think they had left the chamber. An hour's walk outside of town brought Matthias to a clearing at the foot of the ancient mountain. Fireflies were beginning to emerge among the trees. A ring of stones rested in the middle of the clearing. The stones were weathered and cracked, and a few were missing, but wildflowers and toadstools had filled in the gaps. Matthias placed his pipe to his lips and blew a solemn tune as he entered the circle. The mountain vanished, and in its place stood a great stone hall, grown over with clinging lines. Matthias lowered his pipe. Oberon stood there between the stone columns, glistening hair flowing back over his shoulders. "You have arrived," the Sill said. "Empty-handed, I'm afraid," Matthias replied. "You bring no payment?" Cold light burned behind Oberon's eyes. The governor refused. He seemed not to believe the magic had worked. "The rodents drown themselves in the sea, taking their pestilence with them. He can see that for himself." Unfortunately, sight does not always produce belief among mankind. And it is equally unfortunate for mankind that a lack of belief does not satisfy a contract. A boon was granted, payment must be made. It is the law you agreed to when you accepted our instrument. I know your crooks, I respect the laws. The hall filled with whisper carried from the unseen realm beyond. Auburn looked away as Matthias listened. Then the light in his eyes softened. Yes, Piper, he said, turning back, you have always respected the magics. Our grievances with the people of Hamlin, we shall settle the debt ourselves. Matthias shifted where he stood. You have more to say, Auberon asked, raising a silver eyebrow. Begging your pardon, your grace, but there are many people in Hamlin. I don't think they should all be punished for the actions of the governor. The governor is empowered by the people, Auberon said. Regardless, we do not deal in punishments, only payments. When the sun is high tomorrow, we will exact payment from Hamlin. There are children in the town. They have suffered much already. We have heard your petition, Piper. The laws must be answered. Auberon faded, and the mountain reappeared before Matthias. He left the stone ring and wandered back down the foothills. Raising his pipe once more, he played a pensive tune as he looked for a tree to spend the night under. Sleep eluded Matthias. As the sun came up, he wandered the deer trails outside the town. Cresting a low hill, he found a dark-haired girl sitting among the tall grass. A bouquet clutched in her small hands. She hummed softly to herself. Good morning, little one, Matthias said, strolling to her side. You are young to be out on your own. I always gather the morning blossoms, the girl said. Mother says they help with the smells. I'm sure your mother will be pleased, Matthias said, but she will worry if you are gone long. I know, I just needed to rest. The girl pulled a short crutch from among the grasses and pushed herself up to the side of the hill. Tucking the crutch under her arm, she shambled toward the town. You have a kind heart, Matthias said, though she had moved too far for him to hear him. The girl's humming resumed, keeping time with her wobbling gait. Matthias raised his pipe and mimicked the girl's tune. She stopped and listened for a few measures before continuing on. Then Matthias' tune shifted. He thought of the other children in Hamlin, who were probably waking now. He thought of those who had shivered in their beds while the rats plagued the streets. He thought of those who had watched their mothers and fathers cough out their last breaths. He thought of those who still cowered in the shadows, hungry eyes pleading with all who passed them. His pipe sang somber and dark, then paused as the girl reached the edge of town. It would be better if you were not in Hamlin today. Matthias blew through the pipe once more and a new tune flowed out of it, a tune that rolled and bounced along the breeze. The girl stopped to listen. A smile slowly lit her face. A minute later, a boy wandered out of the town and stopped next to her. As the girl's smile spread to his face, another boy joined them. The flowers dropped from the girl's hand as she returned her crutch and began ambling back toward Matthias. The boys followed and quickly overtook her. More children emerged from the town, forming a small crowd. Matthias turned and walked back into the hills as he continued his tune, filling each note with laughter his heart didn't feel. He let his feet wander, heading nowhere in particular, just away. The children thronged around him, laughing as they followed. The tree line broke, and the mountain rose before them. Matthias paused, staring briefly at the stone circle ahead of him, then turned back. Matthias? The tune caught Matthias' pipe. Auberon stood in the circle. We heard you playing, Auberon said. The children hung at the edge of the clearing as Matthias lowered his pipe. I used the magics, I know, he said. I will make their payment. Yes, Auberon said, this will suffice. Matthias furrowed his brow. What will suffice? There are many ways these children can serve us, and we will watch over them, and once debt is paid. That's not, Matthias began, but Auberon looked past him. Come, children, the Sill said, raising his arms and taking a step backward. The tune Matthias had played surged from the mountain, carried by unseen voices. Smiles returned to the children's faces, and they ran forward, vanishing one by one to the circle at Auberon's feet. When they were gone, Auberon looked back at Matthias, lowering his arms. Matthias stared back as the song continued to ring through the air around him. Fine, Matthias said. You have your payment. Leave Hamlin in peace. There are more, Auberon said. What? Auberon nodded toward the trees. Matthias turned to see the dark-haired girl still struggling toward them, her crutch striding and snagging among the rocks and foliage. Behind her, two boys crouched and clung to each other. One of them stared at Auberon with wide eyes. The other looked at nothing, his ear angled toward the mountain instead. Their infirmities slowed their pace, Auberon said. Leave them, Matthias replied. We will mend them, Auberon said. They will see and hear and walk. And there will be 3 more broken hearts in Hamlin. Your payment is satisfied. Leave these. Auberon's deep eyes stared into Matthias' heart. Very well, the Sill said. He stepped into the ring of stones and was gone. The song died on the winds. Matthias turned again. The dark-haired girl crossed the clearing to his side. Please, she said. I want to go too. Matthias looked into her eyes. I don't know if I have saved you or condemned you, little one, he said. But for now your place is here. Take the others, return home. Then he turned and ran into the trees, away from the mountain, away from Hamlin.
How's everybody doing?
Great.
Good. That's good. This is a few parts from a song that I'm writing called True Progression of Momentum. Positive balance, you're lost without it, aka forever drowning. If you decide to be confused but you represent that loudly, all of that stems from simply doubting. But that comes from what you do not know. If you want to change, plant the seed, let things grow. It doesn't matter good or bad for you, can't control it, like an avalanche down the hill without a purpose. A medium, a force, unsure, without skill because the potential that they want, they think is not real. You can get to the same place, different speeds, but it's not a race, and I promise you, who would actually hold your face? Your skull, it's not about your name, it's what you choose to use your brain for, and your skull was worthless anyway. Stuck in a rut for days and days, not even sure which way to walk, and what way. The lazy days turn gray and then remain purple till they turn black, and then once you go black, you can't go back. Sorry, that was not that was an accident in reading the song, I'm sorry. But once you turn black, you cannot go back, and what can you count the money to after that? To be honest, it makes me sad sometimes when I see people and they don't understand why they can't breed happiness, mixing words with mistresses and mysteries causing misery, not knowing why they bleed because they feel that by inconsistencies. Just a little bee in a hive that can't understand why they can't dance because they can't express their mind to the queen, but they just lost their chance. Too late to realize that they control their mind, but they don't have the direction. They're just sitting losing their mind. And then here is the chorus to that song. So easily breakable, not mendable, and uncomprehendable. But it seems those who lost it have grown something so toxic because all they do is try to knock it. Simply to throw it on top of it all, the earth's made its claims and you're driving it to the fall. Do you not understand it at all? I had hope when I was growing up fast, but then I began to crawl and realize that the stall is something we do not control at all. You see kingdoms like Rome and you want that to be your home, but you don't even know your own. Gold, something so bright and blinding that can be created from lightning, but only inside the mind does it seem, I don't know, I lost my place, but basically, if you don't understand where gold came from, it won't mean anything. Too bad I still have mine, so sad you can't expand. I'm just simply glad because you're a man and that's where you stand. A man has the key in his hands to help the goddess understand the purpose for fighting for the land. Now, when you got the idea misunderstood, the gangster blood bullshit without real purpose to try to explain your clique, it's so sick because there are souls flying as little kids and it makes me want to spit in your direction, so I do. Now try to tell me who's who. And then it says boo, but I haven't recorded this song yet. Thank you, and that's what I wrote.
Thanks all for coming. If you can put away your chairs, that'd be great. Thanks so much to Sarah and Mitch for keeping this going. This should have died years ago, so thank you for keeping it going. So, all right, thanks all. It's great reading.
Thank you.